So with that, we're going to move on to item number 2 on departmental reports, which is Valley Street and Magnolia Avenue Complete Streets Project.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair Gokian, Vice Chair Perez, and the commission members. My name is Hussein Ajide. Joining me this afternoon is Mr. Jonathan Shabel, Senior Engineer, and he's going to make a presentation on Valley Street and Magnolia Avenue Complete Streets Project. Jonathan?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Can you see my title slide?
Yes.
Good, very good. Okay, as Hossein said, I'm going to present this project to you, the Valley Street and Magnolia Avenue Complete Streets Project, and it has 2 CIP numbers, 6019 and 3904. The recommended action for the Commission tonight is to support staff's recommendation to implement the engineering design of this project, and you'll be seeing those slides upcoming. So the project location, as you can tell, is that little L shape there, about in the middle of the map. And you can see that there are 4 schools in a fairly close proximity to the project area. We're looking at Valley Street between Chestnut and Magnolia, and also about 500 feet east of Magnolia Avenue, east of Valley Street intersection. And that will become, the reason for that short segment there will become obvious later when we get into some pictures. So the project need is basically to provide a continuous sidewalk, curb and gutter, and ADA compliant curb ramps and sidewalks in this project area. If you've been out there or if you've looked at Google Earth, you can tell that there is some bits and pieces of sidewalk, but it's very hit or miss. The east side of Valley basically has just dirt off the side of the asphalt roadway. The west side does have some old AC berm with some sections of AC walkway. There is one area that's been improved to current city standards near Brady Circle, which is a small residential road that intersects Valley Street about in the middle of the project area. And again, we are looking to provide bike paths. And of course, with the 4 schools in the area, there's heavy pedestrian and bicycle usage during certain times of day. And we're also going to be providing street lighting per city standards. So here's a couple pictures of the existing conditions. So you can see the picture on the left. Again, you can see that sort of haphazard parking off the side of the road, especially on the right side of the picture there. You can see a pedestrian walking between a white SUV and a gray pickup truck. And of course, they don't have a walkway, and the cars are parked where a walkway would be. So they're forced out into the street, which can lead to problems. And on I guess the west side of Valley here, as we're looking north, you can see, just make out that AC berm. It's been painted white, and you can see there's a little bit of a white or AC sidewalk there, or walking path. And then it kind of turns around behind these parked cars here. So it's kind of a pretty heavily congested area. You see the picture on the right, this during a school pickup or drop off period. You see a lot of juveniles walking. Looks like they're walking away from school, so it's probably in the afternoon. And again, on the left side of that photo, you just see dirt going right up to the asphalt. This is on Magnolia, and we're looking westbound. Here's where the sidewalk ends, so to speak. You've got a fence there with some vegetation on it. This is why the project limits on Magnolia only extend 500 feet, because you can see we've already got curb gutter sidewalk beyond that. So this is the edge of the project limits. And if you can't see from here, but on the south side of Magnolia, there's already a wide sidewalk there in front of the elementary school. So the project goals were to increase safety, enhance mobility, and do it in a sustainable manner. So we've got some green street features, and you'll see that in upcoming slides as well. So in order to accomplish these project goals, these are just some of the features that were implemented. We've got ADA compliant curb ramps and sidewalks. We've got a separated bike path proposed on both sides of Valley Street in the project limits, and that would be a class 4 bike path. It is next to the roadway, but separate facility and only for bicycles. We will be installing high visibility crosswalks, otherwise known as continental or ladder crosswalks in the project area. And of course, there is this 4 schools in the area, as we mentioned. We are proposing an activated flashing beacon or RRFB, rectangular rapid flashing beacon at Valley Street and Brady Circle. And Valley Street is not stop controlled at that location, so that will help pedestrians to get across Valley Street in order to head west on Brady. And we are adding street lights, as I mentioned. There are 8 new street lights proposed in this area where there are none. So there are some additional project features that are not necessarily transportation related. We are partnering with the Water District, and they've got an old asbestos cement water main in Valley Street. So we'll be replacing that. Of course, we'll be coordinating closely with the Water District, and they will be funding that from the enterprise fund. There is an undergrounding utility district formed in this area. So we will be looking to get rid of those poles and underground those overhead utilities. And of course, we will be resurfacing the street and striping the roadway with the new resurfacing as part of the improvements. And landscaping will include 27 new trees. And that will be part of the green street features. So here's a before and after photos. We're on Valley Street looking south, and you can see the overhead power and AT&T communications lines on the left side there. And here's the proposed improvements. You can see a lot of trees, a lot of vegetation, and there's that class 4 dedicated bike path with a sidewalk outside of that. These are just artist rendering. So one thing you can't see here is that these there will be some parking bays that right now looks like there's absolutely no parking. I know we got that comment from a few residents, but there actually will be parking on Valley Street, and you'll see on Magnolia what that looks like. So here's another before picture on Valley Street looking south, and we're basically standing in the Chestnut intersection looking south. And again, we've got those high visibility crosswalks. There's the bike paths on either side and sidewalk. And you can see those trees that are flowering. I believe those are New Zealand Christmas trees that were approved by Parks. And here's another before and after. Now we're at the intersection of Valley and Magnolia. We're looking north. And again, we're getting rid of those overhead power lines and the poles that go with that, and providing those ADA compliant curb ramps. And now we're on Magnolia Avenue, and we're looking west towards that intersection we were just at. And you can see on the south side of Magnolia, there's already a wide sidewalk, and this is in front of the Magnolia Elementary School. However, on the north side, you can see there's no sidewalk, and there's vegetation and basically dirt right up to the edge of the roadway. So this is what it would look like with those parking bays I talked about. So we're able to get those green street features, which include the tree wells, but we also have parking there. Another green feature is there's permeable pavers. That's that sort of grayish strip next to the car park, and they'll have an under drain system, which will allow for some stormwater treatment and filtering before it enters into the storm drain system. So this is kind of another view of Magnolia just from an overhead perspective. And it shows you how that you can see there's still parking bays, even though we've got the green tree well features. And in this case, we've got the sidewalk on the north side, which is new. On the south side, as I said, there's existing sidewalk out there, so we're not touching the south side other than to provide some street lights. And because this segment's only 500 feet, we're not proposing to add that dedicated bike path. That's only on Valley Street. So this slide kind of talks about the public outreach we've accomplished so far and moving forward. So we first did a color newsletter and fact sheet back in 2017. Subsequent to that, we met with property owners that would be affected by the project improvements. And we actually tried to meet with every single property owner one-on-one. And we made it, except for there was a couple that weren't interested in talking to us. But we shared these designs with them. And the biggest piece of feedback we got was the fact that there, as you could see from those artist rendering on Valley, initially there was not a space allotted for parking along Valley. And so we did redesign the project to add the parking bays, just like on Magnolia Avenue. And so moving forward, we will be doing more outreach in 2021. And as part of that, we will make these design elements clear to the public, because we did get some comments prior to this meeting that they were worried about parking on Valley Street. And also prior to this meeting, we did send out a letter to the property owners, inviting them to participate, submit comments, and watch online. So hopefully many of them are online right now watching. This project does have its fair share of challenges. It looks pretty straightforward, or you're just putting in sidewalk and a AC bike path. However, the council did form an undergrounding district back in 2017. And so as part of that, we're coordinating with SDG&E, AT&T, and Spectrum Cable. In addition to that, as I mentioned, we're replacing a water main, which will include services for all 25 roughly homes in the project area. As part of the water main design, we identified a conflict with an SDG&E gas main and services. And on Magnolia Avenue, they will be actually replacing, relocating a gas main. We've been coordinating with SDG&E on that effort. There is also future improvement agreements, which is a mechanism that was discontinued in around 2000, where property owners who subdivided their parcels or submitted for permits for a substantial redevelopment or improvement, they were forced to sign future improvement agreements, which would make them pay their fair share of frontage improvements. As I said, those are discontinued in 2000, but there are 5 of those agreements in effect right now in this project area. So that will take some coordination with the attorney's office and finance department. So moving forward, we'll be finalizing plans, specifications, and cost estimates, hopefully early next year. And then, as I said, we're still going to be coordinating in an ongoing manner with SDG&E, Spectrum, AT&T to not only underground those overhead utilities, but also to have SDG&E relocate their gas main and services on Magnolia Avenue. Hopefully, we'll be in front of City Council late next year to approve the plans and specifications and authorize bidding. And at that time, our recommendation to City Council would be to approve the plans and specifications and authorize the city clerk to advertise for bids for this project. And again, for this commission, our recommendation is to support staff's recommendation to implement the current engineering designs for Valley and Magnolia Complete Streets project. Thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, if you guys take the presentation off, I can see all the commissioners to see if they have questions.
Okay, I'll stop sharing.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any questions from the commissioners? I think I see 1, 2. Okay, we're going to start Commissioner Linky.
So I have two questions. First question is the proposed bike paths and sidewalks on Valley. It looks like they're separated from the vehicle lanes with trees and other vegetation maybe, and now it sounds like parked cars too. Is there any concern that that vegetation or parked cars would reduce the visibility of the cars crossing over if they turn into a driveway or at an intersection, a conflict with bicyclists or pedestrians? Either the cars or the bicyclists or pedestrians might not be able to see each other as the car is emerging through the driveway or intersection, and there could be a safety concern there. And I probably stole Commissioner Pensier's question on that.
The street trees will be few and far between. Like I said, we're proposing 27 on Valley Street and Magnolia, which is approximately 1,500 linear feet total. So there's not going to be a density there, and the other vegetation will be very low lying. It's not going to be tall shrubs. So there shouldn't be a visibility issue. These trees are also chosen specifically for that purpose. They have smaller trunks and then a taller canopy. Also, with even a normal sidewalk configuration, if you're backing out your driveway, for example, you're still going to have to cross a pedestrian path there, so there wouldn't be a change in that condition.
Okay. I just have some concerns about that configuration where bicyclists are traveling and you've got cars trying to turn into driveways or at intersections, but I'm sure other commissioners will probably expand on that. And the second and final question is the residents along Magnolia Avenue, seems like they'd be giving up a fair amount of the front yard. Is that something that is not owned by them? Like that fence is going across the sidewalk, or are they okay with that being repurposed for vehicle parking?
Yeah, so we did, like I said, we met with all the property owners that we could, and we discussed those kind of details. One of the things that we had to make clear was the improvements the city's making are all within the public right-of-way. So if you go out there now and you see a lot of these encroachments, things like fences, planter areas, you may think that's their front yard, but it's actually not. We are trying to be cooperative, and wherever possible, we're trying to maintain the existing character of their front yards. But in some cases, we do have to, push back the driveway or put in a small retaining wall because of the slope of the earth, these kind of things to make room for these improvements.
Okay, I figured that, but I just wanted to clarify. Appreciate all the work on this, and I look forward to hearing everybody else's opinion.
Yeah, it's a narrow right-of-way. On Valley, it's only 60 feet, but all the improvements will be within that 60 feet.
Before we go to Commissioner Pensier, Nathan informed me that we have public comments. Nathan, would you like to read the public comments, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair Gokin. I can read those into the record. Ellie, could you confirm I have 5 letters here? Is that the latest count?
Yes, it is the latest count.
Okay, thank you. So first letter, my name is Sandy Friesen, and my husband Russell and I live at 1740 Magnolia Avenue and own the property at 1710 Magnolia Avenue, which is on the corner of Valley Street and Magnolia Avenue. The house at 1710 Magnolia Avenue is a 3-bedroom home with a small rental in the back. The parking on Valley Street is already difficult as it is. My main concern is losing the majority of our driveway on Valley Street and not having anywhere to park our cars. We have moms with young children, teenagers, elderly, etc., all living on this street. And it would not only be a huge inconvenience, but also a safety hazard to have to walk down the street to their cars every time they want to go to the grocery store, to and from work, etc. We would all prefer parking and underground utilities rather than 2 bike lanes and flashing beacons. Regarding safety, I would also like to suggest a speed bump in front of Magnolia School. The North County Transit bus, always empty, flies down Magnolia every half hour. Please consider that we don't live in a condominium complex. We are residents that live in single-family residential neighborhood and would appreciate being able to park our cars in front of our homes. Sincerely, Russell and Sandy Friesen. Second letter from Christine Moore. Regarding the street improvements on Valley Street between Magnolia and Chestnut. The results of a recent property survey that we have initiated has raised questions regarding how city engineers have come to the conclusion that there is space necessary to allow for traffic, sidewalk, curb and gutter, a separate bike path and parking. It doesn't seem possible. If in fact the space is sufficient, our next concern is whether or not any consideration has been given to the residents. With the anticipated improvements, which look great on paper, residents will be backing into 3 separate paths of traffic, pedestrian, bike, and vehicle, very probably at the same time school is starting. We have been waiting for street improvements since 1983. Our children have long since moved on, but we have had a front row seat to some very close calls. We would welcome a practical and beneficial solution to pedestrian traffic on our street. Thank you, Christine Moore. Next letter from Joe Moore. While the initial design that we saw 2 years ago is nice, it is not even close to what it is needed at this location. While it is hard enough now to enter the street from our driveways during school times, the proposed plan from the city would compound this problem with the proposed additional green belts, etc. All we need on this street is standard curb, gutter, and sidewalks with street parking. Have staff visit during school start times during any special event at the high school, junior high, or elementary school, and it will be plain to see that street parking is needed. Please save the Eco Street designs for a different location. Thank you, Joe Moore. Fourth, my name is Sarah Bland, and I live on the corner of Valley Street and Magnolia Avenue. I'm writing in regards to the future sidewalk project. I'm hoping the Traffic Commission takes parking and access to parking into serious consideration. The plans I have seen could potentially remove our driveway. I have a teenage daughter and her safety is always our family's top priority. Her parking down the street and having to walk to our home is something we find very concerning. Thank you for taking these issues into your consideration. Sarah Bland. Next from Chris Highland. I moved to 3670 Valley Street and am legally blind and do not want this to be read. Do want this to be read. I cannot drive, but do have concerns about the room for parking, and we were told definitively when we moved in over 5 years ago that utilities were going to be put underground, and now there is contingency upon funding. This is the ideal time to do it when everything will be dug up, and seems absurd that this may not also be accomplished. Warm regards, Chris Highland. And that's, yes, that's all the letters.
Next, we're going to go to Commissioner Pensier. You have questions. And then I think Commissioner Hunter, you want to next? I see a hand raised. No. Commissioner Pensier, do you have questions, or did Commissioner Linke ask your questions already?
Right. Well, Commissioner Linke covered one of mine, but I have a couple of additional questions. First of all, what would happen if when you do this project, you cannot simultaneously put the power lines underground? It would seem that would basically, you wouldn't be able to do what you've shown on the drawings. Is that so? Is it kind of contingent that the power lines have to go underground to make this move forward?
Up until this point, we've assumed that we can get those utilities undergrounded. So we'd have to go back and look at it. I see what you're saying, though. The poles may be right in the middle of your bike path or maybe right in the middle of the sidewalk. We would look at that, of course, if we come to that, but the plan still is to underground those utilities. I think the reason we got that comment in the letter was because the notification letter that went out and the last bullet for undergrounding overhead utilities says, quote, contingent upon funding availability. And so that's what led to that comment. The reason why that was included in the letter is because SDG&E has recently basically tripled their cost estimate for undergrounding from about originally was going to be about 1.5 million. Now they're up to like 3.5 million. So it's we've been in negotiations with SDG&E on that undergrounding, and it's sort of a complex issue that I think is maybe beyond the scope of this meeting, but we are working and efforting to try to get that done.
Okay. Next question is with respect to the sidewalk and the cycle track. Are they at the same height, or is the cycle track going to be at a different height?
They're proposed to be flush. So the only difference would be the material. We've had right now AC. So what you guys would refer as blacktop for the bike path, and the sidewalk itself would be Portland cement concrete, the light gray concrete, but it would be flush. There would not be a lip or any kind of trip hazard.
Okay. You mentioned that, well, the drawings show that there wouldn't be any parking on Valley Street, but it seems like that has changed. And if you do that, do you still have room for the sidewalks and the bike lanes and the two travel lanes? And I mean, it seems like we're running out of space.
Yeah, that's a good question. The design on Magnolia actually shows what we're proposing on Valley. And I apologize for the confusion. The graphics were developed by artists based on our previous round of public outreach. And so we didn't feel it was necessary to redo those graphics just for this meeting. But we do have the space, and actually I can show you, I can go back and share that Magnolia. It's basically the same design. Are you seeing the thank you slide?
Yep.
So here you see in this case, you don't have the bike path because you're on Magnolia. And as I said, it's only 500 feet. So it didn't make sense to put a bike path for 500 feet with minimal connectivity. But in this case, we do have the same amount of right-of-way as Valley, and we do have that extra space. You can see the curb, the cutout for the parking bay there. You got a car up against that tree well. And so you can see that there is space here. And if you imagine there's another 6 feet for the bike path next to this sidewalk here.
This is going to be this would be the same as Valley. I mean, this shows Magnolia. Okay, so you have sidewalks on both sides. And the bikes will be in the travel lane. So there's no class 4 on this. So are you saying that Valley is going to be the same as this if you put parking in there?
Valley will be the same, except there'll be a bike path.
Where?
Here,
on both sides?
Jonathan, if you want to stop sharing, I can bring up the typical section for Valley that shows, you know, how we can fit all these features.
Yeah.
So basically, while he's looking at that, if you say that these, the sort of green belt with the trees instead turns into tree wells, and then you've got space for parking bulb outs or pop outs in between the tree wells. And you can see the bike and sidewalk on both sides.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah. Okay, well then my concern is the same as it is with a class 4 that's on a street where the bicyclists and the pedestrians are hidden behind parked cars, so that drivers who are turning left or right into their driveways will have a difficult time seeing the cyclists there. I guess that's an issue, well, wherever you put these new devices. So one of the possible ways that could be rethought, I guess, would be to consider making those class 1 facilities instead of class 4, where it's shared use between pedestrians and cyclists. And is that anything that you've thought about if you're running out of space, or if you're concerned about the hazards associated with the drivers not being able to see the cyclists?
Yeah, the class 1 combined ped and bike, it is possible given the space we have. That's something that we could look at with the project team. Right now we have a 5-foot sidewalk with a 6-foot bike path. And so we could combine that and have an 11-foot multi-use class 1. And you would have, that would include the curb, the top of the curb. So it'd basically be about 10.5 feet of clear space. That's something we can consider.
Mm-hmm. I guess, yeah, the other, my concern is that by the time you build this, e-bikes are going to be even more prevalent than they are today. And the speed that they can attain, it will be such that a lot of them will be able to maintain the same speed as the cars on the road, and probably that's where they should be. So, so the idea of a class 1 that would allow for people that are going very slowly on bikes mixing with the pedestrians might make more sense. Because then again, it gives more time for the drivers to be able to see what's going on the sidewalks before they make their turns.
Yeah, we can consider that.
Okay, do you have any other question, Commissioner Pensier?
No, not at this time.
Commissioner Vice Chair Perez? You're muted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It looks like a lot of the commissioners made some of the comments, but I just wanted to kind of go back to Jonathan, if you could pull up the image. I think there's one where it's on the corner of Magnolia and Valley, the rendition. Yeah, right there. Thank you. So I think the one question that I have, or more just a highlight, is if you're looking at this and you're looking at that corner where you have pedestrians on the sidewalk, you have a biker with that red helmet on the bike lane on the class 4, and then right up in front of you, you have a white car that's parked on the house. I think it's that beige house on the right. To me, the question I have is for a driver, and also for any pedestrians, going through that, or bikers, is that there's just a lot of mind shifting going on this. And for that white car to back up and to get onto that street, it looks like there's like 3 potential impact zones, for the pedestrian on the sidewalk, the biker, and then also the vehicle trying to get back onto the street. So, to me, I really do appreciate how this is being set up to improve this street. But to me, I do agree with Commissioner Pansier that, you know, with the new technologies of e-bikes coming in and their velocity or their speed, you know, maybe there is a consideration that we have to look at maybe a class 1 or a shared greenback on there. I mean, I think just to me, there is just a lot of moving pieces on here that could cause a lot of potential incidents, if that makes sense. And then the last question I have is with this recommendation, if we were to recommend this, is the Planning Commission, do they have to approve of this too? And that's all I have for questions.
Well, I can answer that. So there are no discretionary permits, so we will not be going to Planning Commission for this project.
Thank you.
Okay, any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Fowler?
So having worked downtown for quite some time, and the electric bike issue and other modes of non-car transportation where there are different speeds, the assumption seems to have always been, maybe people have thought about this and there's literature on it or something, but I don't think you can reasonably consider all those modes of transportation to be the same. And eventually the legal system has to come to grips with that. I mean, and especially now where you have the big tired, large electric bikes that, for all I know, can go 30 miles an hour. It certainly seems that way if you're on a regular bike or walking. So I think it, you know, and I'm not saying that I have a solution or a comment about it, but if we're building infrastructure as here, at some point, somebody's going to say, well, we need to redo our traffic codes to account for a bike that can go 30 miles an hour or even 20 or even 15 miles an hour versus bicycles that are manually powered. So, you know, it's a conundrum, and I suppose that maybe until that happens, we do have to sort of go sideways into the system by accounting for all these big fast bikes or maybe razors or whatever they are. And that will, you know, take a great plan and cause it to be replanned into some other kind of design. And I think that's kind of too bad. And I think that's kind of what has to happen, though, is that the traffic codes probably have to change based on the kind of vehicle we're really talking about. And we can't really classify those fast big bikes. They're more akin to a scooter in terms of speed and maybe even weight at this point. So that's my comment.
Okay. I can attest that parking is necessary around there. We have mainly, you do have 4 schools, but mainly the 2 schools are Magnolia, which is an elementary, and Valley Middle School. I am not sure how many electric bikes are used by children. I do know that regular bikes are used, and I hope that with this improvement, we will have even more like part of the safe routes to school, more children walking and biking, and they will feel more safe to do so. I do know that the parking is necessary, and if you take away any parking, it's just going to be more traffic. I'm not sure if there is, even though I do want a lot of bicyclists or children to go by bike, I'm not sure if there is a need for bike lanes on both sides. So that's something that I trust the engineers that will come up with the best solution, and they know the property that is owned by the city and how wide it is. But I do hope that they take in consideration the public comments, is the residents' comments, and worry about parking, because you do have those two schools. Unfortunately, they start pretty much around the same time. So everybody's picking up and dropping off at the same time. And especially with the younger children, they do park on Magnolia and they need extra parking on the other side. So that, my other comment, that is not exactly to this portion of a road, but it is because I heard Jonathan mentioning something about the additional street lights. South, not Magnolia, Valley, southbound Valley on the east side, it's pitch black. Once the sun is out, it's pitch black, that area. So, and because of a lot of people do soccer at Magnolia, they practice after hours, it's just very unsafe. So I haven't seen one street light on that side, on the Magnolia elementary side on Valley. So if anyone can make a note about that and see if we can improve, it just seems unsafe because it's so dark. So with that, are we going to see back a final project before? Because it seems like we're not going to construction until maybe 2022. Yes.
Yeah, the proposed, well, in terms of the schedule, the next steps I laid out, we would hopefully get to council by the end of next year for authorization of bid. And of course, that's a 2-month process. And then we would go back to council to award the contract. So yes, construction could begin in 2022.
But this is the final design with the limited parking?
No, this is a preliminary design. I wanted to get the feedback of this commission. And also we're going to do more outreach in the next year. As I said, some of the residents, it didn't, even though we mentioned in the letter that there was paved parallel parking in the existing right-of-way where feasible, we didn't provide figures for this latest mailing. So I think we need to reach out to the public again, make sure they understand what we're proposing. As far as adding the parking on Valley, just like we've been talking about, and a lot of the comments we received of the 5, I think most of them mentioned parking. So that's been a big concern.
I encourage you, when you reach out to public, it's not just residents. I hope my internet's working, but I'm gonna keep going. And if you can reach out to the schools, so we can get some of the parents and students that are coming not just across the street near residents, but also walking few blocks left.
Commissioner, it looks like we are losing Chair Gokin.
Yeah,
Let's give her some time.
Yeah, it looks like.
Okay, so knocks me out.
Madam Chair's back.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hear you. And now we can see you.
Yes, I'm sorry. So did you guys hear the comment about how I encourage you to reach out to the schools too? And the parents and the residents that are a few houses down, not just across the street, because they would also be using the bike facilities and the sidewalks.
Yeah, Chair Gokin, this is Hossein Ajide. If I just can add to what Jonathan said, obviously we are going to maximize parking spaces where we can. The reason we are limited there with basically MPDS permit requirements, because this project triggers what's called a statewide construction general permit. And per requirement of that permit, we have to capture certain amount of basically stormwater and treat them. So initially we had larger BMPs, those kind of, you want to call it treatment basins. Now we are limiting them to a street, basically 3 wells. So per requirements, we have to have these BMPs. We cannot just eliminate them. Otherwise, we are not able to construct the project. So I just want to add that one. The only thing the only areas we are not providing parking is for those BMPs. And obviously we try to minimum those BMPs. Jonathan talked about, pavers and all these trees that we are adding. So those are green features of the green street. And those are basically not just to beautify the area, they are actually to treat the storm water. So I just want to add that one, that these are not just to beautify, they are basically certain requirements that we have to construct.
Thank you so much. Now, once again, for some reason, I keep forgetting that every time there's something going on that the public doesn't like or we don't agree with, the engineers and the staff always has a good reasons behind of why it is like that. So thank you for telling us that it's just the reason. You're doing what you can to accommodate everybody between the residents and the public. So thank you. I think I saw Commissioner Vice Chair Perez. You're muted.
Sorry about that. I'm going to learn how that button works. Madam Chair, I was just wondering, in regards to this report, for the recommended action, it's stating that support the staff's recommendation to implement the engineering design of Valley Street and Magnolia Avenue complete street project. So if we were to put into motion, are we approving the design that has been presented by the staff, or I guess, yeah. So I guess that's the question. I'm taking it that there was a discussion that this is going to go further out until 2021, or I'm not. I just want to get a little bit more clarification on that.
Jonathan or Hossein, someone?
Yeah, so the intent was that we would continue outreach and working through the issues, as I mentioned, the underground district, and then we would take it to council late next year. So that the intent was that we would move forward with the general concept as we've shown you this afternoon, and that we would not need to return to this commission again.
Yeah, that's a little bit challenging for me, and I don't know if council can, but just the term design. So if there was a vote and we said yay to this, does that mean that whatever we're seeing on this presentation is going to be exactly, sorry for being technical on this, I just wanted to make sure that that's what, it seems like what you're saying, Jonathan, is different from what the recommended action here is on the staff report. So sorry if I'm getting into the semantics or not.
I personally would like, since you're getting more public feedback until you go back to council, I would actually like to see what that feedback is and more of a final design.
Chair, if I may, I think that that's a reasonable request. And as the team had mentioned, they're obviously bringing it forward to the commission because you have not heard or you haven't at least got an update on this project in quite a while. And I'm not sure, like what we have spoken about before is our goal moving forward is to bring projects to you during the conceptual design, which is right around a 30% design phase. Unfortunately, this project was beyond that. So we wanted to get it in front of the commission so we could hear initial concerns. Our team wants to implement a project that is supported by the community. While you never get 100% support or even close, we do want to try and get a consensus if we can and get a majority of the citizens at least supporting it and liking the project. So I think that request is it's a valid request to continue with our public outreaching effort. We should be able to come up with some form of a conceptual design that we can present to you and to the public to show what the actual improvements will be, and we can list what the balancing challenges are, right? Because you can't address everybody's needs and come up with the perfect design. There's challenges between parking and then having space for walkways and bikeways.
Right.
So yeah, it's all a balancing act, but I think a reasonable path forward would be for the team to continue to take these comments and document them, and then get with the designers and figure out how they can develop a conceptual plan or a plan that can be reviewed by a typical layman or a resident, and then also summarize the public feedback events and input that has been done to date, as Jonathan had summarized, and then try and get a understanding of the level of support from the different stakeholders, like how are the schools feeling about the subject, the PTAs, and then the residents, and that way we can bring that to you, and we can then provide our recommendations if we're asking you to support the design and move forward, then to City Council, or if there's other tweaks that are needed. But I really applaud my team for bringing this forward, because, and then the last thing I want to say is, or maybe not the last thing, but another important factor is undergrounding projects are very, very difficult, and they're obviously dependent upon the franchise utilities. And they're many times, I hate to say it, but they're many times delayed. And so if we are going forward with this based on the assumption that the undergrounding is going to occur, one is we should do that prior to doing any kind of a street project, because there's so many delays on those projects, it would just further delay our project. So I don't want them paired in any way. I'd like the undergrounding, if the undergrounding is going to happen, we want to have that go first, and then we want to bid our improvements after the undergrounding project's complete. So I think there is time. My team is challenged with trying to deliver projects, and we have a lot of them, and so they're always trying to move things forward, and I'm pushing them to do that, but we have to do it in a manner that's supported by the community. So it's a valid comment, and that's what I would suggest moving forward.
Okay. It's I hope that staff knows that it's a beautiful project, and I am personally excited to see it, and I wish it was able to build it sooner than a year and a half from now. But we take what we can get. But any improvement, again, right, to mobility and safety, it's a welcome project. We just feel more comfortable seeing something that's actually more on the building side, not just some pictures. So with that, I think if we can make a recommendation to support staff's recommendation, but also to bring it back to us before, that would be something that I believe the commissioners and staff would agree on. Okay. Do I have no more questions? Does anybody wants to make a motion? Commissioner Linke?
If the plan is to bring it back, do we need to take a vote today?
I think if we vote on implementing the engineering design, and then to bring it back before going to council. Or the staff wants to advise us on what's the best motion?
Yeah, I think having that guidance would be helpful for staff, just to show support of the project, and then we can move it forward.
Yeah, that would be great, because looks like the concern is mostly related to bike paths. So if the commission can at least support the project as a whole and bring it back with the more like a complete design on the bike path, we can bring it back for your final review.
Yes. Do I have a motion? Come on, one of you be
Can I ask
creative.
a question about the trees? So my concern, it's a great looking project. I'm just concerned about the trees and parking between the bicycle lane and the vehicle lanes. I'm concerned about safety. So I don't know if that's something that we're endorsing. I would probably vote against it if it's just to say, study it more.
So right now we're supporting the project as a whole, meaning to improve or the best approach to complete streets project on this two portion of streets. And then the final design will come back. And at that time, if you still feel uncomfortable, that it's unsafe, then we can have our say. Am I correct?
Yeah. Yeah, my comment is that conceptually, it's a great project. When I looked at the drawings, I thought, hey, maybe we can really make this work. But now that we're throwing parking back into it, now I have some serious safety concerns with respect to the cyclists that would be basically between the moving cars and then basically hiding behind or invisible to the drivers who are entering their driveways. So I can't support it with the parking unless something is different than the drawings we showed in just adding parking and then still having the cycle track on both sides. That's a concern to me. So, having it come back at a point where we can, where it's still possible to make adjustments to that's fine. I want to say one thing is I love the trees they were chosen, because those New Zealand Christmas trees are what were placed along the Class 1 trail. And they're not only beautiful, they're also just put in front of our condo unit. And part of the reason they use those is not only they're great looking and they don't use a whole lot of water, is the roots don't go under and lift the sidewalks and create all kinds of maintenance issues down the road. So they have a really, really good design there. They're just trying to please everybody. And the parking is the big issue.
Okay.
So
Mr. Frank would like to.
Yeah, so with these projects, as we know, you can't please everybody. You can't even come close to pleasing everybody, but it is a balancing act. But what I'd suggest is to make a motion to receive comments and to support a complete streets concept, and for staff to come back with more information on the public outreach and consensus building effort, and conceptual design of what's proposed for going into the final design.
I'll make a motion what Tom said.
I second it.
Okay, so Commissioner Hunter made a motion that the commission approves for the project to come up, or the staff to come up with a complete street design for this portion of roads, and to come back with more comments from public and more of a final design. Is that correct, or do you want Mr. Frank to reiterate what you said?
I think Mr. Frank can reiterate what I said.
Okay, so I said first to make a motion to receive the commission's comments and the public's comments, and to complete the complete streets concepts and approach, but to come back with more information regarding the public outreach effort and consensus building, and also with a proposed conceptual design that we can present to you so that you can review it and hopefully approve it and bring it forward to a final design.
Yes, Commissioner Hunter, great motion.
I thought so. It's very eloquent, I know, but.
Commissioner Pensier seconded. Ellie, do you have all the necessary wording for the?
I do. Thank you.
I saw her taking notes while Tom was speaking originally, so I knew.
Yeah, thank goodness for YouTube and for video. Right?
Okay, are we good for voting? Can you take roll on voting, Ellie?
Yes. Commissioner Wanamaker,
Yes.
Commissioner Linky,
Aye.
Commissioner Fowler,
Yes.
Commissioner Pensiers,
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter,
Yes.
Vice Chair Perez,
Yay.
Chair Gokin.
Yes. Please note that it passed unanimously. Yay, we can move on.